In this video, we are doing a head-to-head, a car versus car comparison between the Skoda Elroq and the Volvo EX30 because I want to answer the question, if you're looking at an entry-level electric car, do you go for the base rear-wheel drive version of this, or do you go for the base rear-wheel drive version of this? But also the second question, if you want a performance all-wheel drive version, do you go for this, the new cross-country version of the EX30, or the RS version of the Skoda Elroq, which I drove last month in Czechia? I have a full review on the RS version, so I'm going to link that down below. But today we are answering the question, Elroq versus EX30, which should you buy and which is the best? The Elroq gets Skoda's newest design language called Modern Solid and the company's new corporate face called Tech Deck. And overall, I do like the look of the Elroq. It's clean, modern, and sleek. And even though this 60 version in silver with the standard wheels is a very dull spec, I still think it is a good looking car. The EX30, on the other hand, is possibly the best looking small electric car currently on sale, and this new cross-country version takes that to the next level, with a lifted body, flared wheel arches, cool wheels, and a front fascia that is a topographical map of Sweden's tallest mountain. Yes, that is what this front fascia actually is. It makes an already cool car even cooler. I really love the way this car looks, and out of the two, it's not even a competition. The interior of the Skoda Elroq is one of, if not the best interior at this price point. Remember guys, this is an entry-level product. This is the cheapest electric car from Skoda and even maybe Volkswagen Group. I mean, it is impressive what you are getting here. And even this 60 version with a few optional extras on the road in Norway is less than like 34,000 euros. And for what you're getting here, it is impressive. So first off, the front cabin is very roomy. It is very spacious. It's wide. There's a lot of room this way, like towards the windshield. It just feels airy and spacious. And also, you know, my knees are far from the dashboard. They're far from the center console. And these seats, very comfortable, very supportive. The only thing they are lacking is a adjustable thigh support. So if you're very long, these seats may not be the best for you, but I'm 5'11", 180 centimeters, and I haven't had no problems in these seats at all. And then you have the sense of quality. So this car has the optional denim interior. So you have this beautiful denim on the seats with contrast stitching. You have it here on the dashboard. You have it here on the center console and also on the doors, which just makes the interior feel nice and interesting and of high quality. And then high up in the cabin, you have these, touch points, which are of this nice textured soft touch plastics, which I have to say, from a quality standpoint, feel and look more premium than what you find in the Audi A6 Sportback e-tron I tested last week, which is a car that is like 3 times the price. And what you don't have in this car that you had in that is a lot of shiny black, glossy black plastics here. It is all matte, so it doesn't collect dust. It looks nice. Like, this feels in many ways a lot more premium than that Audi, which is a lot more expensive. And then you have the user ergonomics. So you have an infotainment system screen on top of the dashboard here. The screen is large, and for the most part, it is easy to interact with. I'm going to show you a few of the shortcuts later. My only gripe about this infotainment system is that the wrap planner, not the best, not the most intuitive. So if you want to know what I don't like about this, check out my range test in the description box down below, where I show you the operation of this on a trip in the real world. But other than that, the user ergonomics here are phenomenal. You have, normal window switches, you have mirror switches, you have your gear selector down here, you have normal stalks, you have a cruise control stalk here. which is the best operation in my opinion of cruise control or ADAS. And then you have buttons, physical buttons on the steering wheel with scroll wheels for your volume. You have your controls on the right side here for your ADAS and also for your trip computer. You have a dedicated screen in front of you for speed and driver information. And then lastly, you have shortcut buttons here on the center console. It's just a pleasure to interact with this interior because the combination of physical controls, knob switches, and the infotainment system means that this doesn't have to be the very best, because the user experience as a whole is one of the best user experiences of any electric car at any price point. It's just a pleasure to use on a daily basis. So if you're considering an Elroq instead of an Enyaq, what you're going to get is you're going to get a shorter vehicle that's going to be more practical and easier to live with if you live in a city where having a smaller car is better for you. And also you're going to get a smaller trunk, and you're going to get a car that is cheaper. But what you're not going to get is a smaller rear seat, because this car between the axles is the same size as the bigger brother, the Enyaq. And that means the front cabin and the rear cabin are going to be identical. And as you guys can see here, it is spacious. You have about the same amount of knee room as you get in the Audi A6 Sportback I tested last week, which is a substantially longer vehicle. But what you're getting here compared to that car is you're getting a bench that is higher off the floor, and that means you're actually getting proper under thigh support. And also, because this is an SUV, the front seats are higher. Even though I'm sitting in a low position as I like here, there's plenty of room for my feet to slide underneath the front seats. So what I'm basically saying is that in this car you have about the same amount of knee room as you have in the A6 e-tron from Audi, but you have a better seating position, you have more under thigh support, and more room for your feet. And if you compare this to the Q6, which is the SUV version of that A6, you have much more knee room. And I'm going to overlay it now, footage from the Q6 Sportback I tested a few weeks ago. This is a much more spacious rear seat, so this is very interesting. Not sure why this is the case. Like, the entry-level version Skoda is more roomy in the rear seat than the most expensive bigger Audi A6. Doesn't make any sense. And even in the middle here, decent headroom. Again, I'm 5'11", 180 centimeters, and I have no problems even here in the middle seat. At first glance, this interior may seem like a downgrade compared to the Elroq. It is most definitely more simplistic, more Scandinavian in its design approach, because there are just a lot less things happening. There's a lot less clutter, but at the same time, it isn't extreme like, for example, a Tesla. There are interesting details like these air vents. You have the Harman Kardon soundbar up front, and also beautiful details like this blue trim throughout the cabin, and also this beautiful metal trim that goes into this door handle. It is metal, it feels high quality, and that is the takeaway of this interior in my opinion, because even though it is simple and Scandinavian and minimalistic, it is also of very high quality. Like, materials up high here are nice on the dashboard. There's just a sense of solidity when you interact with the car, like the switchgear, the knobs, the buttons, the switches, that is a level above what you're going to get in that Elroq. Everything is just high quality. Yes, this is an entry-level product, so you're going to have cheap touch plastics, spread throughout the cabin. But overall, I think the sense of solidity, the quality feeling, the materials, just the fit and finish, like the tolerances here, is a class above the Elroq. The switchgear here, nice to interact with, though I do prefer, the scroll wheels and the more physical nature of the buttons in the Elroq. Everything you interact with here is of high quality. What I'm not a huge fan of is that where in Elroq you have 3 stalks and a gear selector, here you have all of the same functionality on 2 stalks. So your gear selector here, and then you have this stalk which is supposed to do your wipers, your blinkers. It's too much in my opinion. So I think that is a step in the wrong direction. And also, for a lot of people, not having a driver display is going to be a deal breaker. For me, I really don't mind. Like the screen up here is clear, and even though this is a smaller screen than what you're going to get in that Elroq, I think they've used the real estate very nicely. Though you don't have shortcut buttons like you do in the Elroq, so more of the functions are going to be buried in menus. And when I first reviewed this car, like last year, I was very critical to the infotainment system. It has gotten better, but it's still far from being perfect. These seats also very comfortable. The driving position is very nice, and though this does also miss, you know, an extendable thigh support or thigh extension, these seats are very comfortable and supportive. And also visibility is great. And even though this is a smaller cabin than the Elroq, at least up front here, it doesn't feel smaller at all. So I like the feeling of ambiance. I like the sense of quality in this interior over the Elroq. But when it comes to user interface and ergonomics, I think that Elroq is still one of the best cars in the business, and this is somewhere in the middle when you consider all cars it is competing against. The biggest difference isn't the trunk, or maybe it is the trunk and the cargo capacity, but if that isn't the biggest difference, it has to be the rear seat accommodation. Just look how much tighter this rear seat is compared to that Elroq. And what's funny is that there's at least one EX30 that is running as a taxi here in Oslo. That driver has to be very short because, as you guys can see, I am 180 centimeters, 5'11", and I can barely get a finger in between the seat back. Yeah, and you know, talking about that, about knee room, you're sitting much closer to the floor in this car. I mean, headroom is pretty decent, but you're sitting so much closer to the floor that you're sitting at a little bit of an odd angle, and there is actually under thigh support, surprisingly enough. But yeah, this seat is only suitable for small adults or children. It's not even a competition, right? And then you move over to the middle. That's not a lot better. Yes, there is room for your feet underneath the seat, but here you're just pushed a little bit forward and your knees are absolutely touching the seat back. So yeah, and there isn't even a central armrest here. So yeah, for passengers in the rear on a long trip, this is not the best vehicle out of these two at least. Interestingly enough, the Skoda Elroq has this key, which is both nicer looking and of higher quality than the key in the Audi A6 e-tron I tested last week. So that's kind of a theme of this car, like bits and pieces are nicer and more luxurious and more premium than the Audi that is not only like 2 but almost 3 times more expensive, which is just very, very weird. So the key has buttons for unlocking, locking, and also for your trunk. But this is also a proximity key, so when you walk up to the car, it unlocks automatically. And when you walk away from the car, it also locks automatically. Also, you just have it on your person, foot on the brake, and the car powers on, which is very, very nice and easy. So the infotainment system here has a few key features that I really, really like, and that is the customizable bar up top, where you can also customize having a shortcut for driver assistance systems, which lets you easily turn off speed limit warning and also lane keep assist. Skoda, with the technical facelift of the Enyaq, which I went to like late 2023, was the first car to have, you know, these customizable shortcuts with also these just easy ways to turn off all of these annoying driver assistance systems. I remember talking to the UX engineer, and he was so proud about his team and what they were able to accomplish with user feedback. This is user feedback, and they changed everything. And after that, Volkswagen cars have followed suit, and also Audi have followed suit, and a lot of other brands. It's just so easy to interact with this infotainment system. And also, if you don't want to have it as a shortcut there, you can have it as you have a hard button down there here. It's so easy to use. So put the car into drive with the gear selector down there, and then you're ready to go. So the car does default into drive, which lets the car creep. There's a B mode, but unlike with the Audi PPE platform, this does not have full one pedal drive. So if you go off the throttle, it will, you know, brake more aggressively with regen, but there's no one pedal drive. For me, that's fine. I don't know why they haven't, implemented that. That should be easy with software, but maybe there are some technical limitations which would, affect drivability. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know, but other cars have one pedal drive where this doesn't have it, so yeah, that's a bit weird. This being rear wheel drive, it has an amazing turning radius. Check this out, guys. That is insane. That is just insane. So I know the car we have today versus the cross country isn't an apples to apples comparison, because we have the entry level 60 version here. The correct car would be the RS, but that isn't out yet. I was very lucky to go to the launch about a month ago, so I have driven it and I do have an extensive review, which I'm going to link down below. But just keep in mind that, we're trying to compare the Elroq to the EX30 and not necessarily, the cross-country version versus the RS or the entry-level version versus this. We're doing a general comparison, but I can't talk about the cross-country versus the RS because I have driven both. Where the RS Elroq is one of the best driving small electric cars in my opinion. I remember I drove it right after I went to China to drive, the DPAL S07, which is a very good car. I've driven that twice here in Norway and in China. But when I drove that and I drove the Elroq RS, the Elroq RS felt like a baby Macan. It is truly one of the best driving small electric cars, and that with the standard DCC adaptive suspension, progressive steering, is just a very good car. But even this, the entry-level version, does have, the underpinnings of that car. It just doesn't have, the trick suspension, the fancy steering. This is just a basic car. But what Skoda have done with this, what Volkswagen Group have done with this platform is so good, because this stretch of road here, which just gets progressively worse, it's a stretch of road I test all cars where the bumps just come closer and closer. Cars with badly set up suspension that isn't that, finely honed and tuned over years, just gets upset. Most cars with bad suspension, because the bumps come closer and closer, they just, struggle to cope at all. This car is so nicely set up. There's one motion the car settles before the next bump. So it's able to cope with all the bumps individually, and it's just so well controlled. And I remember driving the new Tesla Model 3 Highland last year on the E6 motorway, which is where I test, all of these cars in my range test. There's a bumpy section before I get to my test route, and that Tesla was just bouncing at 120 kilometers an hour. This car is just planted and settled, and that typical bounce that you're going to get in especially cheaper electric cars, this doesn't have at all. So the suspension setup in this is next level. It really is a testament to German engineering. I know this is a Czech brand and a Czech car, but the underpinnings here is German. Skoda is under Volkswagen Group, which is German, so a lot of the engineering is passed down from the Germans. And this car is one of the best, if not the best, driving small electric car. Even this, the 60 version, which has very slow steering compared to that RS version, maybe a little bit on the duller side. It's not exciting to drive, but it's just so comfortable and refined and quiet at speed. Like, wind noise is very nicely suppressed, and there's no oddities with the steering. Yes, the steering is slow, so it's not sporty, but it tracks beautifully, and it's light on center and it's quite light off center. And once you get a little bit of weight over the wheels and a little bit of steering angle, it weights up naturally. It's just a superbly refined driving experience, this car, that I don't think you're going to get in anything other than, well, a Volkswagen or another car on this platform. It is truly impressive. The EX30 has two different keys, so you can either use this key card or this key right here. But the thing about this key is that there are no buttons and no buttons on this either. And when I'm bringing both of them along, the car gets a little bit confused, because using the normal key here, you should be able to just walk up to the car because it has a proximity sensor. and it unlocks the car automatically. It doesn't do that, probably because I'm using both. And also you can also tether your phone to the car and use that as a key also. Not a huge fan of the key not having buttons because they don't always work reliably. So to turn off the driver assistance systems in this car, and also the car powers on when you just have the key on and you sit in the seat, which is really nice. And if you leave the car here and you exit the car, it also keeps the power on, so the AC is running and stuff like that. So you put the car into drive with the gear selector here, and then you can turn off, you should be able to turn off there, lane keep assist, and then you have to approve it every time, and then also your speed limit warning is there. But every time you do lane keep assist and driver alert, you have to, the car gives you a prompt, so you have to confirm it, which is a little bit annoying. So this car does have one pedal drive, which you can turn on and off, but not in all-wheel drive performance mode. And all-wheel drive performance mode also does default to off when you exit the vehicle, but not always, which is weird. So that is, you know, there's a little bit of inconsistency here with the infotainment system. With this car, things don't always work as you would expect. The first thing you're going to notice from behind the wheel of the EX30 is that this just feels like a more premium, a more upmarket product. It's just a little bit quieter, and it's just a little bit more softly sprung. All your inputs and the way the car behaves just feels a little bit more luxurious. It's all a little bit more dampened. The steering, though on center, feels very much the same as the Elroq. The steering ratio is just a lot quicker, and there's just a refinement to the steering where this just feels like a more cohesive experience. It feels like, you know, the people who did the steering spoke to the people who did the throttle and the brake calibration, and those people spoke to those who, you know, tuned the sound and the dampening of the door. And here on that same stretch of road, which upsets most vehicles that aren't well tuned, this car is totally unfazed, because the initial damping of this car, the suspension, is actually very good and quite firm. Going over the bumps, there's one movement, the car settles, and then there's the next bump, and so on and so forth. But this car is softly air sprung, so going over a speed bump like this with a little bit more speed, there's more of a motion at the end of that speed bump. You're gonna get this bump where the car does more than one motion before it settles, and that just gets worse the faster you go. So that's the difference in tuning, but also something we've seen with these a little bit more cheaper electric cars, at least the entry-level versions, where you don't have, you know, more sophisticated suspension. But again, the worst car I've driven on the motorway, or one of the worst, is the Tesla Model 3 Highland, where it just got so bouncy more than the pre-facelifted version. They tried to, you know, soften up the suspension by giving it a little bit softer springs, and that's resulted in more of a bouncing motion. This, you're going to get that, you know, at motorway speeds, but not nearly as much as the Tesla Model 3. And also, compared to that Elroq, yeah, that Elroq is just a lot more planted. So of course, this isn't an apples to apples comparison, because the car we have here today is the cross-country version versus, you know, the Elroq 60. But if you're looking at these cars from the entry-level perspective, you're going to get the same steering ratio, the same suspension here, pretty much the same driving experience in this, minus the performance in the entry-level version of the EX30. And that's where I think there's the biggest difference, because yes, that Elroq is more sophisticated in its suspension tuning, like it's more comfortable, and at the same time it is more stable and more planted. This just is a lot more playful. The steering is quicker, it just feels more positive and more eager to change direction. There's just a liveliness to the way this car goes down a stretch of road, and its chassis that you're not going to get in the Elroq, even in the RS version. Yes, that RS version is more like a baby Macan, but it's still very German and still very serious. Where this car, it's just more fun. And this, the cross-country version with a little bit higher suspension, is actually closer in ground clearance to the Elroq than the non-cross-country version is to the Elroq. But this, you know, dual electric motors, 428 horsepower, it is a real rocket ship. It's fast, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.7 seconds. And even that Elroq in the RS version, it's not going to be close to as fast as this. So that is an advantage for this. Yeah. So overall, like the driving experience in either trim, either you're talking about an entry-level version or the top of the range, I think the Volvo is more fun. It just feels more premium. It's just a nicer and cooler and more engaging experience, in my opinion. Kempower offers some of the best DC fast chargers in the world with their unique, sleek, and modern load balancing charging satellites. The small satellites translates to elegant and streamlined charging locations. When you pull up to a Kempower charging station, you don't have to think about connecting to a charger that delivers the correct speed for your car. The Kempower load balancing chargers automatically will allocate the correct power to your car, maximizing the efficiency of the charging site. When connected, Kempower chargers have a QR code you can scan, so this way you can easily monitor the charging session remotely regardless of payment method. That is just super cool. A huge thanks to my friends at Kempower in Finland for sponsoring this video. I know, guys, today we don't have an apples to apples comparison, but we're comparing more the lineup of the Elroq to the lineup of the EX30. And all things considered, they are very similarly priced and you're getting a similar product, but at the same time, they are very, very different because the Elroq is easily the most practical, the most roomy, the most sensible, and in the real world, you're going to get a lot more range in all of the versions of this. On the other hand, the EX30 is less practical because it's smaller, but that means it is smaller on the outside. And for a lot of people, depending on where you live, that is actually going to have value. And yes, you can have this in a RS version, which does have good performance. And as I said in my review, is like a baby Macan. It is very good to drive, but at the same time, it is very German, where this, in all its variants, even the entry-level rear-wheel drive version, is fun, where this is a little bit dull. And lastly, yes, in all the variants, this is going to have a lot less range. So if that is important for you, there is only one car to choose. But also, as impressive as the interior is here, I prefer this interior. It just has a more special, a more luxurious feel. In conclusion, the Elroq is the more sensible choice. You're getting more car for your money. But if you like fun, there's no doubt in my mind that the Volvo is the cooler choice. I mean, just look at it. This cross-country version with its cool graphics of the Kebnekaise mountaintop in Sweden, the flared wheel arches, the cool wheels, it is just a more fun and a more cool vehicle. And the cross-country version with its performance is by far a rocket ship out of these two. It's like a mini, I don't know, Porsche Taycan Turbo. It is so fun and so cool to drive. So guys, let me know which car you would choose in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.